The first time Daniel Carter walked into the executive boardroom of Harrington Global, he knew he didn't belong there. The polished marble floors reflected the skyline of the city. The air smelled expensive. The men around the table wore power like a second skin. And at the head of that table sat Victoria Harrington, the woman who signed his paycheck and barely noticed he existed. Victoria wasn't just his boss. She was the CEO. Cold. Strategic. Untouchable. The only daughter of a corporate empire built over 3 generations. People feared her silence more than they respected their own salaries. Daniel was different. A former finance strategist who had rebuilt 2 failing companies from the ground up, he worked quietly behind the scenes. He wasn't born rich. He wasn't Ivy League royalty. He earned everything. And today, everything was collapsing. Harrington Global was bleeding. A hostile takeover loomed like a storm cloud. Investors were pulling out. The media whispered that Victoria was too young, too emotional, too inexperienced to hold her father's throne. Then came the bombshell. "There's one way to stop the takeover," the legal advisor said, sliding a file across the table. Victoria didn't blink. "Speak." "The merger clause your father signed years ago. If you marry a majority shareholder before the acquisition vote, control stays within the family." Silence. Every eye slowly shifted, not to a billionaire, not to a rival heir, but to Daniel. Because Daniel Carter, through years of smart investments and stock options no one paid attention to, had quietly become the largest independent shareholder. Victoria's jaw tightened. "You're suggesting I marry my employee?" "It would save the company," the lawyer replied. Daniel felt heat crawl up his spine. This wasn't just business. This was madness. Victoria stood. Walked toward him. Her heels echoed like a countdown. "Mr. Carter," she said coolly, "would you be willing to enter into a strictly contractual marriage to protect Harrington Global?" He could walk away. He should walk away. But this company fed thousands of families. Employees trusted him. And somewhere deep down, he respected her. "I'll do it," Daniel said quietly. The board gasped. Victoria didn't smile. She simply nodded. "Then we draft the agreement tonight." And just like that, the most powerful woman in the city agreed to marry the one man who had never tried to impress her. The wedding was private. No romance. No vows whispered from the heart. Just signatures. Just strategy. Just survival. They moved into the Harrington estate for appearances. Separate bedrooms. Separate lives. Separate rules. Rule number 1, no emotional attachment. Rule number 2, no public arguments. Rule number 3, divorce once the company stabilizes. It should have been simple. It wasn't. Because behind Victoria's icy composure, Daniel began noticing things. She worked past midnight. She skipped meals. She stared at her father's portrait when she thought no one was watching. And one night, he found her in the kitchen, barefoot, exhausted, staring at a spreadsheet with trembling hands. "You haven't slept," he said gently. "I don't have that luxury," she replied. He poured her coffee without asking. And for the first time, she didn't push him away. Days turned into weeks. The takeover battle intensified. The media speculated about their romantic alliance. Paparazzi followed them. They played their roles perfectly. But something changed the night Victoria collapsed. Daniel caught her before she hit the floor. In that moment, it wasn't about stocks, or power, or contracts. It was about fear. He carried her to the hospital. Stayed all night. When she woke up, pale and vulnerable, she whispered something that shattered the distance between them. "Don't leave." Not as a CEO. Not as his boss. But as a woman who had been strong for too long. And Daniel realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a contract anymore. If you're feeling this story, if you love powerful emotional journeys where strength meets vulnerability, make sure you subscribe and stay with us till the end. Because Chapter 2 will change everything. The takeover vote was days away. Victoria had recovered physically, but emotionally something had shifted. She started asking Daniel's opinion, not as an employee, as a partner. They began working side by side at the estate library, late nights filled with strategy sessions and quiet laughter. She discovered he played piano. He discovered she loved old jazz records. Masks slipped. Walls cracked. One evening, during a high-profile gala meant to show the board their unity, an investor made a cutting remark. "Let's hope this marriage is more stable than the stock price." Daniel saw Victoria freeze. For the first time, she didn't fire back. Instead, he stepped forward. "My wife rebuilt 3 divisions single-handedly while fighting internal sabotage. The only unstable thing here is your confidence in underestimating her." The room went silent. Victoria stared at him. That wasn't in the contract. Later that night, in the back of the limousine, she asked softly, "Why did you defend me like that?" "Because it's true," he replied. "And because you deserve someone who stands beside you, not behind you." Her breath caught, and the space between them felt different. Not strategic. Personal. The takeover vote arrived. Tension crackled through the boardroom. Votes were cast. Numbers calculated. And in the end, they won. Harrington Global remained under Victoria's control. Cheers erupted. Investors shook hands. Crisis over. The contract had served its purpose. Which meant it was time to end the marriage. The divorce papers were prepared. Victoria signed hers first. Daniel stared at the page longer than he should have. This was what they agreed on. Clean. Logical. Necessary. He picked up the pen. But instead of signing, he placed it down. "I can't." Victoria's composure faltered. It was always temporary. "Maybe at first," he said quietly. "But somewhere between board meetings and hospital rooms, I stopped pretending." Her voice trembled. "Daniel, I didn't marry you to fall in love," he continued. "But I did." Silence filled the room. Then something remarkable happened. Victoria Harrington, the untouchable CEO, walked across the space, took the unsigned papers, and tore them in half. "I don't want a contract anymore," she whispered. "I want a husband." And for the first time, the kiss they shared wasn't strategic. It was real. Months later, the media still speculated. But now, when Daniel walked into the boardroom, he didn't feel out of place. Because he wasn't just the largest shareholder. He was her equal. Her partner. Her choice. And Victoria Harrington, who once believed love was a liability, finally understood that the strongest mergers aren't written in contracts. They're written in courage. Victoria and Daniel thought the worst was behind them. The hostile takeover had been thwarted, the company stabilized, and the contract that once bound them in a strategic marriage was nothing but torn papers in a drawer. But life rarely plays out on a simple timeline, and love, especially one born from obligation, has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. It started subtly. A late-night call from Daniel while she was reviewing quarterly projections. "I can't sleep," he said, his voice low, hesitant. Victoria's heart thudded, not out of irritation, but because she realized she had been waiting for that call without knowing it. The conversations grew longer, filled with laughter, confessions, and memories they had kept private from the board, from the world, from themselves. Yet, the outside world still watched. Investors, employees, and social circles whispered about the marriage that saved a company and wondered when it would end. Victoria, ever poised in public, felt a strange tug in her chest whenever Daniel was mentioned. Not jealousy, but an ache of knowing how deeply he had become a part of her life. One evening, Daniel suggested a weekend retreat at a private lake house he had rented for strategic planning, and secretly, for them. Victoria hesitated at first. This wasn't in the plan. But she found herself nodding. As they drove, the city skyline disappeared behind them, replaced by serene forests and the gentle ripple of water. For the first time since the contract, she felt free, not a CEO, not a boardroom warrior, not a wife on paper, but just herself. The first night at the lake house was quiet. They cooked together, laughed over burnt steaks, and shared stories that never made it to the office. Daniel spoke of his childhood, growing up with nothing, and how he had learned to fight silently. Victoria admitted the pressure of living in a gilded cage, of carrying a company on her shoulders before she had even truly lived. By the firelight, their hands brushed, a fleeting touch at first, but it lingered. That night, sleep eluded them. Victoria found herself sitting on the porch, watching the stars, when Daniel joined her with 2 cups of tea. Words weren't necessary at first. They simply sat, letting the night speak for them. Then Daniel broke the silence. "I never expected to feel like this," he said, his hand brushing hers. "But now, I can't imagine my life without you in it. Fully, not just strategically." Victoria turned to him, her heart racing. "I thought I could keep it professional, keep my heart out of this. But I can't, not anymore." The weekend that followed was transformative. They laughed, cried, danced in the living room, and shared dreams that weren't constrained by corporate walls. By the time Sunday evening rolled around, the world outside felt distant, insignificant compared to the bond they were finally allowing themselves to embrace. But reality waited, relentless and demanding. Back in the city, the board was skeptical. Investors were anxious. And a rival executive, sensing the change in Victoria, attempted to manipulate a minor financial misstep to pressure her. When the news reached Victoria, panic surged through her. She wanted to face it alone, but Daniel wouldn't hear of it. "We face it together," he said, unwavering. "Not as boss and employee. Not as contract partners. As us." Their teamwork became seamless. Daniel's analytical mind paired with Victoria's instinctive leadership created solutions that impressed the board and stunned the competition. They weren't just surviving. They were thriving, stronger together than they ever had been apart. Then came the quiet moment that truly cemented their love. One rainy evening, as they watched the city lights flicker from Victoria's office window, Daniel took her hand. "We started this to save a company," he said softly, "but I think we found something far greater." Victoria's eyes glistened. "I never imagined that I could love like this. That someone could see me, not the CEO, not the Harrington name, but me." Daniel smiled, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "I always did. And now, there's no contract, no boardroom, no audience. Just you and me." And in that moment, the world faded away. The city, the company, the pressures, they existed, but only as shadows. What mattered was the bond forged in fire and strategy, now transformed into something raw, tender, and eternal. By the time the next quarter rolled around, Victoria and Daniel were no longer just CEO and shareholder. They were partners in life, love, and business. Their story became a legend in corporate circles, not just for saving a company, but for showing that love could blossom even in the most unlikely of circumstances, and sometimes, the strongest alliances are forged in both boardrooms and hearts. As they stood side by side on the balcony of Harrington Global's headquarters, hands intertwined, Victoria whispered, "I never thought a contract could lead to this." Daniel smiled, pressing his forehead to hers. "Neither did I, but some deals are worth more than money, they're worth love." And with that, they turned toward the horizon, ready to face the world together, not as boss and employee, but as soulmates who had discovered that the heart, once unlocked, could change everything. If you're moved by Daniel and Victoria's journey, from a business arrangement to true love, make sure to subscribe to the channel. More stories of courage, love, and unexpected fate are coming, and you won't want to miss a single chapter.